Are you ready to optimize your Zwift indoor cycling setup? Join me as I take a step-by-step guide into using Zwiftalizer, the free and easy online tool that has helped thousands of Zwifters get the best out of their training setups. In this video, I will explain what each chart means, how to interpret the various performance metrics, and how to use this information to make your Zwift gaming experience more reliable. As a bonus feature, for seasoned Zwifters, stick around for an exclusive deep dive into the data that I've collected over 2 years. I've crunched the numbers from approximately 10,000 users to settle the debate once and for all, which is more reliable, Ant Plus or Bluetooth? What are the most reliable trainers? And what are the most popular GPUs for an ultra-smooth graphics experience? So whether you're a total noob or a level 60 Zwifter, I guarantee you'll learn something in this video. So my name is Mike, and this is just a hobby website. I'm not connected with Zwift in any way. Before we dive in, I just want to thank all the people who've made donations via PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, and Patreon. Without you, this site would not exist. Let's get the basics out of the way first. So how do you log in? How do you sign up and log in? Let's go. In a web browser, go to zwiftalizer.com, links below. Then you'll see this page and it says sign up for free. Now, be sure to click on need an account, sign up at the bottom there. And then we need email address and password. And I'm using a password manager, 1Password save that as a login. And sign up. Don't close the browser window. You'll receive an email with a verification code, which you need to paste into that window. It's very easy to miss this. I get a lot of emails asking, please can you verify my account, because it sometimes closes. So over in Gmail now, in my Gmail client, there's the confirmation code. Let's see if I can make that bigger. Yeah, there's my code. Jump back over to the sign in page, confirm your account with that code, and you should be signed in, ready to go. Now that we're signed in, the next step is to upload a log file from the game client. You can do this in two ways. You can either click on the box here, or you can drag and drop from the Finder or Windows Explorer. I'm going to use the drag and drop method. So here's a quick look at my Finder window where we have users, mHanny, your name will obviously be different, documents, Zwift, logs, and you want this one, log.txt, or any of the older ones, but let's keep it simple. So let's drag that over. It should light up green if you've got the right file, and wait. Okay, great. Now what? I often hear people do this and they say, what am I looking at? That's what this video is all about. I'm going to walk through every single number here. I'm going to take it slow, try and provide as much explanation as I can. Remember, I'm not Zwift. I'm an outsider just looking in. It's a bit like going through somebody's garbage, trying to find out what kind of party they had yesterday. It's a byproduct. The log is a debug product from the developers. I don't know what they were thinking when they wrote those. What were they thinking? So I am making some assumptions, especially toward the end when we start talking about network metrics, but let's get into it. For this section of the tutorial, I'm going to use the demo log file so that you can follow along. So over in the left-hand side of the website, click on demo, and here's a log file uploaded by Mr. Dave Higgins. And I'll go step by step. Let's take it from the top. First, session. This is a straightforward date and time of your Zwift session, plus how long the log file was overall the activities. Activities count is how many rides you did during your session. It's called activities, not rides, because I wanted to include Zwift runners as well. Both of them. The load time is how long it took from launching the Zwift program to landing on the menu screen. Low values here, say below 30 seconds, indicate that you're using a solid state SSD drive. Higher numbers, probably a magnetic, older, spinning drive. I feel this is an important metric because anything that can be done to save time in getting into the app, getting set up for a workout or a race, is a worthwhile optimization. Remove any barriers to getting your workout done. So small detail, but I do feel it's a good optimization. An SSD, if you're building a PC, is probably the best cost per performance piece of kit you're going to get. Okay, game version, launcher version. This is all information about the, as you might think, the version of the client that you have installed. When I review some of these logs with people who are looking for help, I'll always make sure I'm on the latest version. By the way, these little eyes, those are information. And a lot of what I'm reading out today is stuff I've written into these help file icons. Okay, next up, devices. I'm going to explain what this table is all about. This table lists what sensors are currently connected to Zwift. This should align with what you have selected in the device's pairing screen. The device type is listed in the first column. The entries here will be one of either ANT+, Bluetooth native, which you'll see BLE native, Bluetooth Low Energy, the Bluetooth companion app, or LAN, Bluetooth over LAN, which is the Wahoo Direct Connect device. Later in this video, I'll share with you statistics that I have from 10,000 users to say what is the most reliable connection type. So stay tuned. We're going deep today. You might want to get a cup of tea. Okay, activities. Let's go into... I have an example here. The activities list is a radio button selection. If you, during one login, you do multiple rides in multiple worlds. Let's take a look. Here's one where the rider was in Scotland for an hour and 2 minutes and then switched to Watopia for 12 minutes. So flipping the radio button there, you see the charts change. I'll do that one more time. Okay, now back to the demo. Let's talk now through the next section. The main dashboard, really. I look at this like a dashboard. Once you're familiar with the figures here, you can quickly scan and get a good idea of how the system is performing. So the first three icons should be familiar to you. This is your setup. You're using Windows, Intel CPU, and an NVIDIA GPU. Next, we have the specific CPU model number, Core i3. I know this is 12th generation 100F, F denoting that this particular CPU needs a GPU in order to have any graphical capabilities, and 8 gig of RAM. Over on the right, the GPU, Graphics Processing Unit, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 Ti. The tick at the end there means that Zwift has a profile set for that card. The assignment of profiles to graphics processing units is a lookup table in the Zwift game client. If you don't see a tick there, you'll see a poop emoji. Yeah, I should grow up. What will happen there is you may have a very, very new GPU and expecting to get really good performance out of it, but unfortunately it's not in that lookup table, so you end up on basic or sometimes medium, because there is no entry for that in the lookup table. Now, because I've collected tens of thousands of logs, I do have pretty much that complete lookup table by now. So I don't know, maybe I'll put that in some files you could link to later, link below. I'll also talk at the end about buying advice. We'll cover that then. Okay, did I miss anything? No. Now we're getting into the next section, because I talked there about what profile does your graphics card get. That takes us into this section, Profile Ultra. Deep breath here for profile and resolution explanation. Let's give it a shot. Profile is the graphics quality, the polygon count, the density of models, the level of detail, sophistication of shadows, etc. You cannot set this yourself. You cannot hack this through config file tweaks. Ignore that article I wrote in 2016, 2019 update. Just ignore it. The game engine automatically sets the profile according to the capabilities of the GPU. To understand more about profile and density of models, Watch Simon Schofield's Zwiftcast special called How the Alp Was Made. Links above, below. He interviews graphics artist and lead, I think, Tony Reyes, who explains everything in great detail. Resolution. Resolution is the size of the rendered image. You choose this in the game settings. It is independent of profile. The names for profile and resolution, unfortunately, in the game are the same, but they are not connected. Choosing high from the resolution options only changes the resolution. It does not give you the high profile. Okay, the following 4 numbers relate to your graphics FPS, or frames per second, which is the smoothness. It's how many times the scene is redrawn per second. P1 is the first percentile. This is a better way of representing what your worst or minimum FPS was. I don't use the absolute minimum because often that happens for just a second. I wonder if we have, we have one in the example log here. It goes right down to, I don't know, 35. The first percentile roughly means 1% of the time the FPS was 54 or below. The average FPS is what you'd expect it to mean. On average, the FPS was 78. This is the most important value. Ideally, you'd want this to be 60 or above all of the time. Now, mobile devices like iPhone, iPad, Android, and Apple TV, not a mobile device, but has the same CPU. They're capped at 30 frames per second. The max is the absolute max. Maybe I should have used a percentile there too, but that was a long time ago. That ship has sailed. It is what it is. Standard deviation, this is how much variance there is above the average. This is a little bit, all over the place. 11% deviation from the average overall. Ideally, you want that to be 0, low as possible. So the coloring, this is based on my own opinions. Orange is okay. Green is good. Orange is okay. Red is bad. These colors are set based by me, based on my own preferences. My goal is 60 frames per second at all times in all worlds. iOS and Apple TV are capped at 30, so that's not for me. Your expectations could be completely different to mine, so apologize for yucking your yum if you like 30 FPS. Let's take a break from the numbers and look at some examples of Zwift in action. It's just easier to get an understanding of what the profile means. I'm including this interlude to help understand a common question of what really is the difference between basic, high, and ultra profile. However, the clips here will lose some fidelity because of YouTube's heavy video compression. So here's Apple TV on the basic profile on the left, the NVIDIA GTX with ultra profile on the right. A few things to note. So the frame rate on the left is dipping under 30 FPS, especially in the dust. No brighter shadows there on the left. Picture on the right looks sharper. A little bit more in the background, like more number of trees and stuff, but it's not a huge difference really, is it? I mean, in the scenery looks the same. It's the detail. Oh, those shadows look different. Frame rate's the biggest difference. I can tell the one on the left is, it's okay, but the one on the right is so much smoother. In some ways, it reminds me of animation, the one on the left, like hand-drawn 90s Disney, and on the right, 3D Disney Pixar. I don't know, that's not the greatest comparison, but it looks cartoony on the left and a little more 3D cartoony on the right. This is interesting. I've done interleaved, so we swap between GTX and then back to any second now. Yeah, Apple TV. Exact same ride. I'm watching on one, I'm riding on the other one. I'm riding on this one. Watching on the other one. That's why you can see back to me down in the bottom left corner. So the dust section, I think you can tell, I hope you can tell on YouTube, with the frame rate, maybe check that your YouTube playback is on 60 FPS. It should be 1080 60. 60 FPS 1080. Here I'm pretty sure that's 30 FPS and that's 60 in the game. The difference between Apple TV and the GTX. The GTX 970 is quite an old card now, but it's still holding well. For I'm running Apple TV's running at 1080. The Nvidia GTX is running at 1440 ultra profile, 1440 res ultra profile. But for the YouTube video, that's been scaled down to 1080. Again, scenery is the same, a little bit maybe more high definition texture, high resolution textures. So when you are on a larger TV, that will make a difference. It won't look as pixelated. Model definition, I don't know, you might not be able to see, but around the curves there, the one on the ultra profile is more of a circle, and the one on the lower profile is more, well, you see the lines that make up the arch, like not as extreme as a hexagon, but that's the easiest thing I can think of to explain the shape, the roundness of the shapes, where having more detail in the models, the polygons, will give you more of a curve. All right, next up, Apple M1 with the Apple Silicon build from late summer 2023. This is the first MacBook Air, the very first M1 that came out with 16 gig of RAM and the 8-core GPU. It's very smooth. It's got the shadows. Looking at these two, I would say it is as smooth as the GTX 970 on the Ultra 1440 profile. These are both at 1440, both not quite holding 60 FPS. I'll talk about that when we look at the log after this. But when I interleave them now, so same ride, same as before, one's watching, this one, the M1 is the watcher, the GTX is the rider, interleaved here, and I hope you can see this in the YouTube's compression. There's a little bit more clarity in the Ultra profile on the GTX than there is on the M1, but it's very, very hard to tell. You might see some stuttering on both. On the current build, I think it's 151. Had some issues on the GTX. The higher cards, that should be fixed probably by the time this video comes out. Yes, both are a little glitchy. The group size, by the way, is 75 riders. That's the biggest group I could find at 10 PM on the Pacific Northwest West Coast time, where what would that be? 1 AM for the East Coast and 6 or 7 AM Europe. So it's very quiet my time in the evening on Zwift. Same side-by-side comparison, starting with the Apple TV and the Nvidia GTX 970. This time, as you can see, Mercury Island. So, same scenery, pretty much. It's better FPS on the right, smoother, but not bad on the Apple TV. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, now it gets. I could tell it's not quite as smooth, but there's here's the thing. There isn't really much price difference between these two machines. Apple TV I think it was 139 US dollars plus tax. Everything US has to add tax. The NVIDIA GTX 970 GPU card cost me $100 in 2016 used. Now they're, I don't know, $50 maybe. Put that in a used Office PC. You would need to upgrade the power supply because it's an older card that requires, I don't know, 350 watt power supply. But if you use a more recent card like the 1050 Ti, that only requires 75 watts, which means you don't need an upgrade on the power supply. You can put that in a used Office PC and get the ultra profile at roughly the same cost as an Apple TV. There is of course a difference in size of those two units and portability. So if that's important to you, then building a PC probably not for you. Okay, looking at them interleaved like the other example, then we see, should switch now to the GTX. Yeah, quite a bit of difference in clarity. And that is due to the higher definition models, high resolution textures on the avatars. So when you use a higher resolution telly, like 4K, I'm not running in 4K, but let's say, you are, with 4 times the number of pixels, you'll notice if you scaled up the Apple TV to a proper 4K TV, jaggies and pixelated surfaces, which you wouldn't notice. Well, it would be a lot smoother and sharper with the ultra profile on a higher end GPU. I'll let this run a bit longer. I think you should be able to see the difference in the smoothness looking at this on 60 FPS on YouTube. For anyone curious, the capture card is on it's actually on an M1 on the Mac for the Apple side of things, and on the NVIDIA GTX it's recorded with OBS running at the same time as the game. Yeah, this time the Apple M1 high profile on the left and the GTX again on the right, Ultra 1440. They're both at 1440, both have the Rider shadows. Now this is very difficult in this side-by-side view to tell the difference. I'm really struggling to tell the difference between these two. It's a little bit more noticeable when I do the interleaved view in a few minutes, in a minute or two. But yeah, that's really hard to tell apart. Okay, cost comparison. Yeah, I got a Costco catalog through today, so brand new with a Costco discount. The Apple M1 MacBook Air is $749 US. My PC with the NVIDIA GTX 750 is about $150. So if portability and using your computer for other things is important to you, a laptop now, yeah, you can get some really good performance from a laptop, but remember, there's no upgrade path, and when that machine if it breaks, that's it. There's nothing in there that you could repair or even have repaired by Apple. They would have to replace the whole machine. Okay, in this view, it's difficult to see any difference at all. I really struggle to see the difference here. Maybe slightly more clarity in the ultra profile, but you know, you'd have to get your magnifying glass out at this point, I think, to tell the difference. There is a difference in smoothness. I can see there drops in FPS on the MacBook. I couldn't find a large group. It was about 11 p.m. Pacific time. So in the US, that's really early in the morning, 2 in the morning. For the East Coast, early morning UK. It's a very quiet time on Zwift, which has been my experience for the last few years in my time zone. All right, I'm going to let this run out, but let's get back to the charts. Let's take a look at the log files from those activities. Here's the log from the M1, the Mac, showing high. So I just did 10 minutes. This is the 16 gig version. It's the M1, the first release, but it's the one with the 8 GPU cores for those interested. So it dips down, at the 1% there, 34. That was when we were in that dust. Average though 58, and it's pretty good. High 1440. This is good. Crowding. We'll talk about that in the next section. But this rhubarb and custard slug thing here, we'll explain all about that next. But for now, let's just focus in on the FPS profile, resolution, FPS. So high profile. It's not the top end. We saw a little very, very slight difference in the model kind of sharpness between high and ultra. But honestly, it's really hard to tell. Here's a couple of things you could do to reset this page if you just want to do another one. And let's upload the PC log. So this is my PC from the garage. It's old, dusty. This is one I built myself. Cost now about $150. It's really old. Let's tell you why. The CPU, the 4690K, that was the top i5 in the 4th generation. Held its value really well. It's probably $50 max with a motherboard now and RAM. And the GTX 970 is a classic, still going strong. I've had it for, 6 or 7 years. And I bought it used then for $100. My point being, you can build up a PC with the top end capabilities for a lot less than people think. And it's not that hard. Anyway, that's a bit off topic. So I've got Ultra 1440, not the very top end 4K reasons. This is dippy. We need to talk about this. This is where knowing your game version up in the top there is useful. Let's drill into that. So 151 had some issues, still does. Right now it's November 2023. Clocks have changed, it's getting dark. This is kind of why I did this. It's time that people look at upgrading their machines in the Northern Hemisphere dark winter. I'm up in the Pacific Northwest. It's that time of year. Okay, let's get back on topic. Yeah, dips all over the place. Interesting how it relates to the UDP traffic. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But for now, just comparison of that Mac log. I tell you what, let's get them both up side by side. Not that one. Let's. Okay, here's the Mac. So averaging 58, 1440 high. Here's the PC averaging 55, a bit lower, but it is on Ultra. So yeah, there you have it. Before I get into the UDP network metrics, let's do the deep dive into all the profiles, all the resolutions, everything I've collected over 2 years to give you everything I know from Zwiftalizer users, not the whole of the Zwift user base, but from what I know about people who use Zwiftalizer, what the spread looks like between these profiles and resolutions. Here's a report I created for the total number of logs uploaded in the last 2 years. So it's obvious from this report that the most Zwiftalizer users are on PC, then Mac, iOS, and Android. But that's logs. Let's look at number of users. So over 7,000 on PC, between 1,500 on Mac. It's the same kind of spread. Then activities. So I'm sharing this because this is the data set I'm using for everything that follows. Roughly 160,000 activities. Remember, an activity is when you might switch world between one session. So 160,000 roughly on PC, roughly 20,000 on a Mac. It's higher than I thought. 3,000 on iOS. That's quite surprising because it's a bit fiddly how to get to a log on iOS. And Android, that surprised me. Okay, so things to note. Since I only have logs from people who voluntarily upload them to Zwiftalizer and not from the entire Zwift customer base, I cannot conclude that these charts are representative of the Zwift platform itself. Also, there's no logs from Apple TV, which is a very popular platform because it is a black box, literally. They're inaccessible. Keep that in mind as we go deeper into this data. Quick recap, about 200,000 rides, 75,000 log files, 10,000 users. Next, all right, my friends, I've moved my mugshot out of the way so we can read these charts a bit better. Tell you, man, people who do YouTube for a living, respect, this is really fiddly and hard. I don't really have the patience. Surprising, really, isn't it? Because I put all that effort into making these charts. Anyway, this one surprised me. Here's the total number of Zwiftalizer users for each profile and resolution. The two most popular profile and resolution combinations are 1080 basic and 4K ultra. It's important to point out that I'm counting distinct users, not logs or activities. Reminder of the profiles, we've got basic, medium, high, and ultra. And to get to the ultra level, you need a dedicated GPU. Still true, even with the M1 having its quite unique GPU on board, that'll get you high now, but not ultra. So I think I already mentioned Zwiftalizer is a really popular tool with people who like to build a PC specifically for Zwifting. So ultra as the overall slice of the pie there, that doesn't really surprise me. I have a chart next of adding up all these bars into one view. Let's see if we can do that with the keyboard. Exciting. Yeah, ultra, not taking into account resolution now, just profile. Ultra is the biggest slice for the Zwiftalizer users. I have to keep saying that. This isn't Zwift, this is Zwiftalizer data. Still surprised to see so many 1080 basics. My assumption here is that those folks are more concerned about connectivity issues than updating their graphics or upgrading their graphics. That's expected. I know laptops are hugely everybody wants portability. I think portability generally more important now. We're in the post-PC era for sure. During 2020, there was an increase in PC sales temporarily as people went work from home because of the pandemic and lockdowns. And then it went back to normal, which was decline in PC sales. Going off topic, but I think it is important to know or relevant because Zwift is a business. It exists to make money. It doesn't make sense for them to pour resources and money into the platforms that aren't that popular. Let's move my mug around. Okay, back on track. Let's move my mug again. So this is the most popular systems at basic profile, and got notes here. You probably tell I'm reading. Observations. Across the board, I see that over 80% of the CPUs belong to laptops. The most popular device in the 1080 basic category, Core i5 1035G1 at 1 gigahertz. I just happen to know that is the type of CPU found in a Microsoft Surface. Two other interesting observations here. The A12, that is the CPU in iOS devices, the 12th generation iPhone, 5th generation iPad mini, 3rd generation iPad Air, 8th generation iPad, and 2nd generation Apple TV 4K, which is not 4K. The Apple M1 entry is an anomaly. Before the M1 got blessed with the native Apple Silicon binary by the Zwift gods. And you'll see later in the charts that popping up in high. Let's keep going. Most popular systems at the medium profile for Zwiftalizer users, M2, medium. That is also an artifact of history now, as the M2 chip has also been given the high profile by the Zwift gods at the end of the summer 23. So two things to note in the medium segment. The laptop GPU, NVIDIA MX150, MX250, 350 and 450, plus the GT1030 are all really good cost-effective options for getting high FPS and a medium profile, which includes rider shadows. The NVIDIA T1200 is a new one. That's worth a look. In this category, all these CPUs, nearly all, are laptops. I know this from the U and H suffixes. So high profile. This one, interesting. The Apple M1 Silicon. This is big news for Apple users. 2023 Apple Silicon Binary, late summer 23. As we saw in my comparison video, the high profile at 1440 on the entry-level M1 from 3 years ago performs well. It's even better with the M2. M3, I've seen, well, one so far this morning. Looking good. Expensive though. But if your company buys your machine, you might consider it. So my takeaway from the last 3 charts is that there are a lot of people using laptops. That's a little different now when we get into Ultra. This is the domain of the PC builder. Or is it? The Ultra chart, no surprises, Intel plus NVIDIA combo fills the top 20. Zwiftalizer users figured this out in 2016 when I first did a Zwiftalizer. The learnings were, and still are, single core speed is more important than a number of cores, and that the NVIDIA GPU line are better at OpenGL. This is all to do with the drivers. Things have improved a lot for AMD GPUs and OpenGL on AMD, but the general consensus is still that Team Green is the way to go for Zwift for a trouble-free life, or fewer troubles, not entirely true to say zero. So we are really deep into this rabbit hole now, so I'm going to keep going. The top 20 GPUs by popularity, not performance, for ultra smooth graphics at 1440, all NVIDIA again. The 1050 Ti popular, 1650 advisable, get the latest one. Quick word on generation codes here in NVIDIA, just briefly. It goes the 900 series, then the 10 XXX, like 1050. Then we've got the strange one, the 1650 and 1650, in between the 1000 and the 2000 series, if you know what I mean. Interesting, no like 2060s, 2050s in this 1440 category. Let's just jump ahead to the 4K Ultra. This is where you see the 2060 and the 3060. These are the current generations. Oh, no, actually the 4060 is the current. But we don't see any in the top 20. And I think the reason for that is if you're buying a 40 something for Zwift, you're spending too much. The graphics aren't going to make use of the capabilities of the 4060 like RTX and ray tracing. You just don't need it. Save your money, buy nice clothes for cycling or something. Okay. Anything else on this? Really? No, I think that's it for where I got to with looking at the GPU choices. Now we are like 3 left turns in. We have to come up for air. And I did say we'd go back and look at the UDP. We're probably halfway through, half an hour in. This is going to be a long video. Thanks for sticking around this far. Hope you made that cup of tea. I need a refill. Anyway, UDP metrics. Wow. Yeah, where to start? Okay, I wrote a few things down, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. The UDP network metrics chart, this rhubarb and custard color chart underneath the FPS. We're looking at the demo. I aligned them on purpose because there is a relationship between the UDP network metrics and graphics performance, which I'll talk about now. First though, to understand this chart, we do need to talk a bit about the different types of networking protocols, UDP and TCP. If you're a techie, feel free to skip. I'm going to attempt to explain the difference for less technical folks. So imagine you're in a massive cycling race in the real life with 2 different communication methods between the race organizers and the cyclists. UDP, User Datagram Protocol, is like the race organizer using a loudspeaker to give the updates. They broadcast the message to everyone, but they don't check to see if everyone heard the announcements. This is fast and works well when it doesn't matter if the cyclist misses a bit of information, like group position. There will be another announcement shortly. TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, on the other hand, is like the organizer sending out individual race marshals to each cyclist with a message. The marshal confirms that the cyclist heard and understood the message. If a cyclist didn't hear it, the message is sent again, retries. This is slower because of the back and forth, but it ensures that important information, like a change in the race route, is received and acknowledged. In massively multiplayer online games, UDP is used when speed is crucial, and the game can handle if some of the data, like position updates, is lost or arrives out of order. TCP is critical when information must arrive without error and in order, like uploading the fit file at the end of the activity. The UDP network traffic is data sent to and from the server, describing the whereabouts of yourself and other players. Higher numbers imply the surrounding crowd is larger. Crowding creates more work for your CPU, which results in lower FPS, because the CPU has to issue all the individual drawing calls instructions for the avatars around you, which are all wearing different clothing, have different hairstyles, glasses, bikes, etc. The CPU does this on the main core and will prevent the GPU from reaching its full potential in medium to large groups. A CPU with high single-core performance is currently required to not be a performance bottleneck to the GPU. Let's look at what the specific entries mean. Max STC. So max STC, first of all, STC, server to client. The maximum server to client UDP packets as measured in 1 minute intervals. So the max in a 1 minute interval. This is the server sending you the positions of the nearest 100 riders around you. The more riders, the higher the number. Average STC, service client, in a 1 minute interval. This is the server, again, sending you the positions of the nearest 100 riders on average. That over the whole ride, on average per 1 minute interval, is what the second number represents. Next, we have the opposite direction, max client to server. So your machine uploading your whereabouts, max and average. Interesting here, if you are just sitting watching or in the just watch mode, you would see 60 in the average CTS. Sometimes I see these logs and I know that somebody's just not participating, they're just watching. RX error and TX error. RX is receive, TX is transmit. I hardly ever see anything in these two. I don't know if that's an artifact of how they're being logged or what. Don't know. Remember, I'm on the outside looking in. Don't have any insight into how Zwift was coded. Let's talk about this crowding percent, because this is an estimate. I made up these categories, say, these labels. It's an estimate of the riding group size around you based on the sum of the average STC and the average CTS UDP packets being transferred per minute. Blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? Well, in a really, really busy situation, like a full-on group ride, 100 people around you, there is a max number when you add these together between around about 2,800 and 3,200, because Zwift is limits to the 100 people around you. I can therefore then use that and say that, well, that's 100% crowding. Then I break it down into 4 tiers, 4 buckets in 25% increments. So from the bottom to the top, those are called, and I made up these names, solo, company, crowded, and packed. Why? I did it so that when we look at the benchmarks comparing the performance of CPUs and GPUs, we take into account, say we, it's me, take into account how many riders were around you. Because it's unfair if you're riding solo and getting great performance out of a cheap card like a GTX 750 on your own, might hit 60 frames per second, which is great. But the minute you hit a large group, it's going to dip right down. So it's unfair it's just not the same. Okay, so the impact of the riders around you. It's interesting to see this. So here's a couple of logs and the impact of your CPU on alleviating that bottleneck. Here is a 4th generation Intel Core i5. I know it's 4th generation because of the 4 there. 590. So this is very similar to my setup. By the way, that 8109 gig is incorrect. Anyone from Zwift, if you see this, you might want to fix that in your log file. I've corrected it now on my end, but really, that's 8 terabytes. That's not right. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. When the number of riders around you goes up, so the CPU has to do all those draw calls for all the 100 avatars around you, your FPS is going to dip. The GPU is waiting on the CPU. This is now, I don't know, 8 years old CPU, maybe more. Compare that to a 12th generation Core i3, so lower down in the stack in Intel's codes, but a much, much faster single core CPU. Plus, the number of instructions per clock cycle is also much greater on the Core i3 12th gen. So it's not exactly the same here, but the principle holds. The UDP metrics going up here, the yellow slug going up there, I'm kind of in the way. One sec. Just notice my talking mugshot. The bumps here on the Core i5 correspond to the dips in the FPS. Then jumping over to the newer CPU that is not a bottleneck, holding a steady 60 FPS. This is great. Ultra 1440, 60 FPS. Good CPU. Not a very expensive CPU. About $90 right now in the US, £90 UK. GBP. Okay, I think anything else about this main dashboard? I don't think so. I think that's it. Oh yeah, one more thing. Couldn't help it. You can share these log files through some easy links. Let me do that right now. That's what I'm looking at now. People have shared these, and it's a public version of reading the log. What I mean by that is the data behind it has been scrubbed of any personally identifiable information. I'll show you how to share yours now. So let's take it from the top again. Go to the log reader, upload a new one, or one I've done before. Let's do that. I didn't look at the Kakuri Island. All right, so loaded up a log file. How do you share it? Well, it's right there, the share link. I'll tell you what's happening in the background there. It doesn't create the link straight away because I would like to receive confirmation that you know what this means. By clicking this link, you agree to make this page public. Your raw log file is never shared. I take this very, very seriously. Your email address is in the log file. When you upload it to my service, I keep it for only 7 days in case we want to diagnose something. It's automatically deleted after 7 days. The report on that log file is kept. Everything is encrypted. Everything is very, very secure. And when you make it public, I remove any personally identifiable information from the data. But now we have a link. It's copied to the clipboard, and then you can share that in social media or emails, however you want. Yeah, you don't see data from this page. You just see the summary. All right, I think that's clear. Any questions? Use the contact below. Down at the bottom, contact me. I'll jump over to my blog where there's a contact page. It'll go straight to my inbox. ANT Plus versus Bluetooth. I love this. Okay, ANT Plus. How to read the chart first. ANT Plus RX fail. What does it all mean? So let's zoom in again. What I'm talking about here is this section. You'll see one chart here for each sensor or device that you've got connected over ANT Plus. We see here there's two. The ANT Plus trainer. I happen to know this is a Neo. And heart rate strap, and I'll get onto the FET failures next. I said there's one per device. The trainer is 2 devices, the power, and then the resistance changes. That's what the gradient, the FET changes are down there. I'll get onto that in a minute. But first, what does it all mean? So the chart shows the times when Zwift failed to receive an ANT Plus sensor message because of radio interference. But it's not a dropout. These charts are not the dropouts. Zwift expects to receive 4 messages per second, but many don't make it because of this interference. It's sensitive to this wireless interference, mostly caused by Wi-Fi. So another analogy, tech folks, I'm doing my best. Imagine you're riding outside on a smooth tarmac pavement, blacktop. Then every now and then you get a crosswind. It's annoying, but it doesn't really stop you. You might wobble a bit. Now imagine the crosswind is a huge gust while you're taking a drink and you drop your bottle. You have to stop to pick it up. That's a dropout. That is, you've lost the pack. You get dropped. So in the charts, an average failure rate here of 15% or below is completely normal. And there's no interruption to your power or your resistance changes. So don't see this chart and think and freak out. That's totally fine. This is as good as it gets though, by the way, around about 2%. 2, 4. So 15% or less is what you want to see in this chart. 8 transfer messages failures in a row will trigger the device repairing. That's the dropout. Don't see any here. So let's pull up a log with a really bad fail rate. Now, if I saw this, I would freak out. 20% fail on the heart rate. That's a bit small. Let's drill in because you might be on a phone. 20% failure rate there. 22 there. Overall 430 disconnects, and this was a 43-minute ride. That must have been an awful experience, getting dropped all over the place, or a workout where power was just not working out for you. I'm going to talk about some ways to alleviate the interference. I'll show you what I do. Back to the script. Let's talk about these FET transfer failures. This is important too. Again, it's not a showstopper. It shows times, the FET gradient resistance change failures shows times when the controllable trainer failed to receive an ANT plus resistance change message. The trainer may feel sluggish to respond to gradient changes in that situation, or in ERG mode, resistance change not quite on time with the interval change. When it's high, though, that's a major concern, like in this chart that we're looking at now. The number of expected gradient changes is unpredictable because the route slope is we don't know what's coming up. So it's impossible to estimate here a percentage rate. It's not an end of the world, though, because like when I talked about UDP, like a broadcast message, there'll be another one soon enough. There's no retry here. You just wait for the next message. So you then may go up in the gradient to where you should be, but a little abrupt, so it might not feel quite as smooth. Okay, now the disconnects chart, 430 in this case. That's shocking. This is dropouts. These are times when the ANT plus sensor failed to receive 8 packets in a row and had to reconnect all the devices. That's important. It can be really quick to reconnect, and that I have heard people tell me that different dongles can connect quicker than others. I don't know about that because I think all the current dongles are quick. That would be very difficult to test. But since I'm on the subject, I've got the Suunto Mini. What's that called? Movie Stick Mini. It was so long ago that I bought it. Don't quite remember. It was $30 to $40 US. I also have an Anself brand, no-name brand off eBay for $9, and it's just as good. Wi-Fi. Why does this happen? Well, ANT Plus is fixed to one frequency. It is 2.457. This is exactly the same frequency as 2.4 gigahertz wireless channel 10. Avoid channel 10. I'll quickly show you how to do that on your router. I'm going to do it right now since we're in the middle of the charts. It really does not take very long. I might edit this though, because you're going to see my Linksys router login in there. Okay, blank this bit out. Look away. Okay, I hardly ever look at this, so I appreciate your patience as I fumble my way through this bit. So I've got 2 Wi-Fi network, Maestro B, Maestro G. Showing you my password. Let's get into, okay, how do you do this? Wi-Fi settings, Wi-Fi name, channel, there it is. 2.457. Avoid. Be on the lower ones. Do that even if you use an Ethernet hardwired network with the computer device you use for Zwift, because other devices in your house, like phones, could be using the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and they could be causing those crosswinds, that interference with your ANT plus signal. And Bluetooth. Okay, anything else? Yes. The deep dive. But I'm going to do that with ANT plus and Bluetooth together. So first, Bluetooth. Let's talk through those charts now. So Bluetooth, ANT plus versus Bluetooth. Let's talk first about the difference in the protocols. Both ANT plus and Bluetooth are wireless communication protocols that allow your cycling computers, sensors, power meters, heart rate monitors to talk to each other. ANT plus was developed 20 years ago by Dynastream, which was acquired by Garmin and is the OG original protocol for on-bike power meters, heart rate monitors and everything else in cycling. It can broadcast to multiple devices at once. So imagine you could be on Zwift and you have your Garmin head unit as well, and they're both receiving the power data. However, ANT operates on that single frequency, 2.457 gigahertz, so it's prone to Wi-Fi interference. Bluetooth, on the other hand, typically provides a more consistent connection, but it can only communicate with one device at a time. This means you can't use Zwift and a cycling computer head unit at the same time. This one-to-one connection is a common reason why Zwift doesn't talk with your device, because it could already be hooked up, paired somewhere else, like your cycling computer head unit or your phone. You need to find out where your device is paired first and then disconnect it from there, just like you might do with headphones. So choosing between ANT Plus and Bluetooth could come down to how you want to use it, like with those multiple head units or not. But I'm going to show you shortly that with all the logs I've collected, 200,000 activities, there's really quite a clear difference between the reliability between Bluetooth and ANT Plus. This is one of the reasons why I collected this data in the first place, was to be able to answer those questions. Which is more reliable? Which is the best trainer to get in terms of reliable connection? So on screen now is a Zwift ELIZA log with some problems. So resends, well, first of all, resends, ANT Plus doesn't have that capability. Bluetooth does, and it's quite low down in the stack. It's the device link layer. So if a message isn't received, there is this ability to ask for it to be transmitted again. Resets. Now, I don't really understand what the resets are, but I just logged them and presented them here in case one day I do find out what that means. Let me give you some explanation though, because in reading lots of the forums, I do remember a Zwift engineer discussing that in Bluetooth, there is a buffer storing up these messages, and then the device responds to them. And there is a possibility that that buffer of instructions can become too full, overflow. And if that happens, it needs just to be cleared out, flushed, started again. That could be related to what a reset is. Bluetooth disconnect. These are dropouts. So that is when the communication has been lost between the trainer and Zwift and needs to be reestablished. There are far fewer disconnects in Bluetooth logs than there are ANT Plus logs. I'm going to talk about that now. Let's look at the data that I've collected across 200,000 activities, 75,000 log files, 10,000 users. What are people using Bluetooth, ANT Plus? Clearly from this chart, Bluetooth native is, well, is it clearly? It's just in the lead a little bit at 15,000. Next, we've got the ANT Plus and Bluetooth mix. Then ANT Plus only, then the companion app, and then BLE LAN is the Wahoo Direct Connect device. Interesting device. Using Ethernet, the kicker can be connected into your local network. The protocol going over the wire is still the Bluetooth packet, same packets that would have gone over the air. So next, how does that break down year over year? Because I thought maybe we'd see a difference here due to the Zwift Play controllers and steering devices, which came onto the market 2022-23. Actually, the Stereo may have been out before that. I think these ANT Play devices are really quite popular and have tipped the balance here. So the mix there, the ANT Plus BLE mix, the purple-pink bar, went down, and then the Bluetooth went up in 23. Okay, jumping back for a second to the overall logs by connection type. So I'm counting the number of logs, not users. So I'm interested to see how this breaks down across the platforms. So with PC, it's a mix. Most people use a mix of ANT Plus and Bluetooth. On the Mac, Bluetooth native, not surprising, really. Built in, works. Android, Bluetooth native exclusively. iOS, Bluetooth native exclusively. ANT Plus and Bluetooth deep dive. So with all the information I've collected over 2 years, 200,000 activities in 75,000 log files by 10,000 users, out of those 200,000 activities, 41,000 of them had at least one ANT Plus dropout, compared to 11,000 that had a Bluetooth dropout. That's 3.5 times more reliable if using Bluetooth. It's the same kind of ratio on the Mac. Now, There is one possibility here that ANT plus dropouts are being logged more frequently by the logging system, but let's assume not. I think Bluetooth is more reliable. The protocol itself, unlike ANT plus, which is that fixed frequency, Bluetooth hops around 37 different frequencies, up to 16,000 times a second, to avoid congested channels. It also keeps a map of which channels have the most interference on them and automatically avoids them. It can do this because it has that one-to-one connection, so that the device receiving the message, if it doesn't get what it expects, can request, send that again, please. And it can do this very quickly. ANT plus cannot do that. What else? There's a difference in the number of dropouts based on which trainer you're using. The trainer with the fewest dropouts is the Neo. I need to explain how I got to these charts first, though, because let me read this to you, because I didn't want to miss anything, so I wrote it down. Different devices might be used more or less frequently with Zwift throughout the logs, therefore appear a different number of times in the data set. A device that is used more often has the opportunity, therefore, to experience a dropout more, which could lead to a higher number of raw dropout count. To make a fair comparison, I have to account for these differences in usage frequency. So I do this by dividing the total number of dropouts by the number of times that device appears in the dataset. This calculation gives us a normalized figure that represents the average number of dropouts per appearance for the device. After normalization, a higher value indicates that a device is more prone to dropouts on average, while a lower value suggests better reliability. Let's look at power meters first. So these are the older ANT plus only type devices. It's clear. My conclusion here is that for power meters, PowerTap is king of the hill. 4eyes does pretty good, really good. Favaro Assioma, really, really good too. Then there's this whole range right in the middle there, where these are all power meters with all about equal connectivity, but there's definitely a difference there, slight, with PowerTap, and a big difference with somebody having a really bad day with a rotor power meter. Let's do smart trainers next. So next, ANT plus smart trainers dropout rate with Zwift. Shorter bars means fewer dropouts. So Tacx Neo top, the most reliable connectivity. I'll let that just sit on screen for a bit. All right, then over Bluetooth. Oh, the number, check the number at the bottom there. The average disconnects per occurrence, like the number of times that device appears in the logs, like normalized out. Lastly, while we're down this rabbit hole, Bluetooth smart trainer power dropout rate for all Zwiftlizer users. The one with the fewest dropouts, the Wattbike. That was a surprise. And now, remember, I'm not just counting how many times does the Wattbike appear. It's the dropouts relative to how many times that device appears throughout the logs to make it fair. Tacx Neo and Kicker Core, very, very close to the top there. Interesting, the Kicker Snap quite far down, but these bars, there's not a lot of difference until you get down to the Magnus and the Vortex. UDP networking connections, network connects up here. So following the ANT and Bluetooth charts, I've got a chart, UDP network connect. I'm going to try and explain this. UDP doesn't keep a connection open. There's no retries, there's no acknowledgements, unlike TCP. So what does it mean, like a connection? I think it's this. I wrote this in the little help bubble. So UDP doesn't set up a connection before sending data, so the term connection isn't quite right. The client sends and receives data packets to the destination IP address and port number without waiting for an acknowledgement. Let me talk about destination IP address and port. Wow, where to begin? It's a complex topic, right? Networking, the internet. Let's keep it simple. Zwift backend servers it's not a server, it's a cluster. That's a number of IP addresses and ports available to receive thousands of connections, tens of thousands of connections that one server couldn't handle. So what I think is happening here, the connection manager in the game running on your PC, Mac, phone, whatever, in the background keeps an eye on how many packets is it receiving, is it flowing? And if this connection manager detects, well, we've lost some UDP, too many, we expected more, didn't see it, it could try to connect to a different IP address, different endpoint in that cluster of servers on the back end. That's what we see here. Each purple line there, I think, is a re-establishing the connection. It's nothing to worry about. If for, say, 3 seconds you don't receive anything, that connection manager sees there's nothing coming in, then you would see something in the UDP disconnects or network timeouts, trying to get that connection re-established or some data flowing. It's difficult to talk about this in terms of connections because it's not really a one-to-one, or there's no acknowledgement that the connection's been made. What happens in the game is when you get disconnected like this, all the riders around you disappear. There's an interesting artifact there, going back to the rhubarb and custard slug. Notice how it's completely dropped out. There's no data flowing. Almost certainly there, you would have not seen any other riders around you for that short period of time, which is, well, actually looks like a couple of minutes. So that aligns with this network timeout and this large number of disconnects. Notice how it's really uniform there, the gaps between the lines. And it says this in the logs. Connection manager failed to detect data within blah, blah, blah. So I plotted it out. While we're on the subject, the TCP disconnect. I don't want to make too many assumptions here because I'm on the outside looking in. I don't really know the implication of losing the TCP connection. But knowing that TCP is important for completion of a file upload or download, it could be related to the FIT file. Maybe periodically. No, that's not true. The FIT file only gets uploaded at the end. Let's keep it simple. Anything that is file related, upload or download of a file, could be affected if you have a TCP disconnect. You probably see one at the end when the game client or just disconnects because it's done. That's completely normal. Okay, let's wrap up this whole tour walkthrough with a couple of other things. Scrolling around here, start to lose it. Okay, yeah, latency. Ooh, this is a big topic. Okay, latency. This little chart here, latency test failures. What does that mean? I'll read it. I totally appreciate that these little bubbles are quite hidden within Zwiftalyzer and they're small. So I'm going to read it to you. This chart shows times where Zwift detected your network latency. The delay in time to send or receive data failed to meet the minimum requirements for smooth gameplay. You may have experienced stuttering graphics at these times as your client worked to correct any delayed positional data of riders nearby. Let me explain what I meant by that. Have you ever seen riders jump forward and then jump back? Have you ever seen anyone in the start pen attached to their trainer in-game drift backwards? What I think is happening there is that person has quite a high latency, meaning the time for their data to travel like across the internet to the server is so high, it's dropped. But then when they do come back into, say, service, their position has to be corrected. So instead of them like suddenly popping around, the game client smooths it out and they drift back into place. Don't be that person. Pay attention to your latency. Make sure that your local Wi-Fi in your house is good, or use a wired connection. Look into quality of service, packet shaping in your router. Prioritize your device. I could show you, but I want to go outside and ride my bike. Maybe I'll do another video. Hey, subscribe and like and let me know, because if this is useful, I'll do more. Quality of service, packet shaping, prioritize your device, which would give the network traffic to your Zwift PC priority over, say, Netflix streaming in your house and other things that people might be doing. Okay, yeah, 1 or 2 entries here, not a big deal. You'll need to improve the stability of your internet connection if you see a lot of entries here. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like sort out your Wi-Fi. Ping can help you here. Let's take a look. Now, ping can mean lots of things to different people. Ping in the context of this tool. How do I get back? I went really off on one. I'm not even on the second feature of Zwiftalyzer yet. I think I'm going to have to do more videos. Ping test. Will this work? Yes, good. Okay, let me move my face. The round trip from your machine to Zwift servers and back. I'm certain that Zwift servers are in the Oregon AWS region, AWS West 2. What my test is doing is it's using HTTP, so not exactly what the UDP traffic is like for Zwift, but it's the distance that's roughly the same, because I'm hitting up US West servers for their voice over IP. It's kind of like voice over IP, WebRTC traffic. And let me zoom in on this, because this is, just lucky here because of my proximity to Oregon. I've got a really smooth trace there. pretty good. It's pretty good. So max 44, average 28 milliseconds for traffic to go from my machine. And I'm about 200 miles as the crow flies from US West too. I'm a bit north of that, up in Washington State. That's as good as you'll see. But I looked up what is your expected latency around the world and included that in this table here. Why does it matter? Okay, what does it matter? Well, let's say the maximum acceptable round trip time would be 300 milliseconds. That's 3 updates a second. That's not very much to keep the player positioned correctly. You know, you'd want it way more often than that. So maybe that's it. Like maybe about 300 to maybe even 600, like 1 or 2 times a second is enough to keep that player moving smoothly, given that there's some compensation for those jumpiness, you know, what I talked about earlier. Okay, what time is it? Yeah, I got to go for a ride. So I'm going to continue this later. Hope you're enjoying this. I'm kind of am. But it's not really my thing, YouTube. But let me know. I'll do more if you find this sort of thing interesting. I'm almost done, so I'm going to keep going here. Following latency, there's one more chart left that I'm going to talk about, which is the world clock offset. It's a value in the log, so I plotted it out and I made some assumptions about what I think might be going on here. Let's zoom in. So over here, world clock offset, 21 milliseconds. What does this mean? What does this mean? Yeah, this is what I think it means based on 2 conversations I've had with Zwift employees going back many, like 2016, I think. So game clients all over the world, they have a bit of clock drift. The server knows this because in the packets, network traffic packets being sent back and forth, there's a time, the server time, and then your time, and it can compare the 2. First of all, that's how it knows like your latency. And also, if there's drift on your PC, Mac, iOS device, phone, Android, whatever, it can compensate because this is everybody's in the same environment, right? Massively multiplayer online game. There's going to be some clock drift. So here, going in here, right in the middle there, bottom where my mouse is now. So it goes up and down, that square wave thing. I think that is when adjustments were made to not your clock. Swift's not going to change the clock on Windows. Within the game, I think the timer, you know, how long you are into the activity, there's a slight adjustment being made, I think, to keep it in sync with the time on the server. Okay, folks, there's 3 more things I want to talk about. 2 of the features of Zwiftalizer website, and then I am going to share with you some of my buying advice, which will age really quickly, I expect. Okay, benchmarks. This was a popular feature of the original Zwiftalizer 1.0. Zwifters figured out really quite quickly from this that NVIDIA cards work best, that sort of thing. So people asked me to bring it back. Or I asked people, what do you want me to bring back? And both of you said, the benchmarks, please. But there's more to it this time. There's the world, the profile, the resolution, and that idea of like how crowded was it, because that has this impact on your FPS. So quickly here, how might you use this? Yeah, I don't know. How might you use it? Well, this is how I would use it. I would pick your standard that you want to hit, you know, like Ultra 4K. Let's go for the top, Ultra 4K. In the most packed situation, this is what I defaulted it to. So which machines have the highest average FPS has to be at least 5-minute long activity to make it into the benchmarks when it's packed. So from top to bottom, these are the best performing machines. I think it's lost some value because cyclists, being the competitive types they are, you put a number in front of somebody and they want to beat it. So people have uploaded logs with the very, very capable systems, and now it's not as useful as it was because these are expensive machines. This is not good advice. You're paying too much. You're wasting money. These are all really high end, like i9s and i5s. This is complete waste of money. So I would look at it a different way. I would use the search feature. Look at a CPU like the Core i3 1200. What is it? 12100F. That's a $90 CPU. I know that's a really popular CPU for people who build Zwift PCs. You need to know prices. You need to know prices in your country. Now, there's no way that I could keep up with all the prices around the world and supply. So some of this is on you. Do some work here. But this should help. This should really help you narrow down some high-performing CPU and GPU combinations. So one other thing you could do here, the 2060. You only need a couple of key values in here for the search to be effective. So, I know this one, the 12100F with the 2060, averaging 115 in Watopia, and we've got other worlds in here. Should give you an indication because it's pulling from real log data. I missed something. So jumping back to the benchmarks, let's do, now what can we do? Here's the i3. It's really interesting, or it's not far off from the i9. That's because of that single core behavior we talked about earlier. Single core, way more important than number of cores for right now, the way Swift works. You can click on these entries to get a longer list of the log entries for that combination, for that system. That's not obvious. It's not like a really obvious link. So I just wanted to mention that. M2, M1, you can quickly get to start with the machine and then look at the performance that way. You can use this two ways, benchmarks down or machine search up. Okay, I want to wrap this up now. I do want to get out while it's still light. I'll share with you now a bit of a crazy decision matrix that I did just for fun. If you were buying a computer just for Swift, based on your criteria of graphics, affordability, portability, etc. down the left, I've scored them out how I would look at this. Almost all devices now don't give you any options for upgrading or repairing. Pretty sad. Recycling, I guess, is a thing, like trading your phone. So I guess there's that. So the score at the end, bottom of the row, is how I would evaluate these machines. Really, Intel Macs now, Intel MacBooks are really not a good purchase. The M1, M2, M3 has just blown them out of the water. If you bought an Intel Mac in the last 4 years, well, bad luck. Sorry. Upgradability, repairability, customizability, 000 across the board. The only device that can be upgraded and repaired is a PC. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching, everyone. Yeah, like and subscribe if you found this useful. That will let me know, is this worth doing more of these sort of things? I will if I get enough feedback. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or there's something you'd like me to look at next in the data. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're outside, stay safe. Bye, everyone.